Now, I know that a couple of other people have mentioned this, but this is the territory we traffic in many a night, and that is other people's money, how they spend your money. And yet again, there is a huge amount worth talking about that we are learning about via the Senate estimates process. Talk about a deal that stinks to high heaven. You see, the entitlement that politicians get is also extended to many of the high upper-ranking members of the public service. So for all of the conversation, and rightly so, about how much money did you spend on this flight, travel routes, all the rest of it, well, some of this is given a free pass again at the upper echelons where, remember, the bureaucrats are paid more than the ministers who are theoretically in charge of them. And at times they are paid even more, twice as much in some departments, than the actual Prime Minister. Now, a perfect example, the Future Fund. It exists to be, essentially, the people who manage the superannuation and the pot of billions of superannuation of Australian public servants. And what about what we learn in the past 24 hours about the Future Fund's chief executive and some of the questions to answer? Now, he's been around the Future Fund for some time, but he had a rocky time at Senate estimates thanks to David Pocock. Can you believe this? Future Fund Chief Executive sent his executive assistant on at least 2 business class trips overseas, including one to inspect hotel rooms for the executives at the Future Fund, while the CEO of the Future Fund, who, remember, is significant because of the job that he has, kind of working for the Australian government, while he was attending the exclusive members-only Club 33 at Disneyland. I mean, literally Disneyland. We have a story. Disney's exclusive Club 33 was founded in 1967 and membership is by invitation only. So think as this is like the chairman's lounge of Disneyland. If invited to join the club, prospective members have to pay $35,000 American, $53,000 upfront, and then an annual fee of about $15,000 American dollars. Now, this is the bit that really is weird. There are questions about who actually paid this membership. I'll take it on notice. I'll get back to it a little bit later. But what about this? The bloke said that he wanted the exclusive Disney club, when he went to the exclusive Disney club, to learn about the entertainment giants' training programs. Pull the other one and play his jingle. Really? Now, again, Disney is one of the great companies of the Western world. Its business is entertainment. Hospitality is part of what it does. But how the bloke who's in charge of, in part, managing the superannuation fund of Australian public servants, all money that, of course, is generated by you, the Australian taxpayer, this one seems a little weird. Here's some of the back and forth from Senate estimates. Remember, this is all okay under the rules, but of course many a politician, or they lose their gig over a pub test. This would fail any bar anywhere in the country.
On one of the trips we did when we were looking at setting up a learning academy for the Future Fund Academy, which teaches culture, one of the peer groups that we identified in the study was Disney and the Disney University, because they do cultural induction for their teams in a way that seems quite effective. And so we organised for some meetings with a person who was involved in that activity and had a tour of the facility, which included lunch at the location that you're referring to.
Oh, wow. We're going to play that grab again. Did he just use the term Disney University? Now, I know McDonald's has Hamburger University, but seriously, the Australian Senate is able to drill down on a public servant who had to go and see for himself with his own eyes, but sent the EA first to go and check out the facilities. Have a listen to sort of Canberra speak at its weirdest.
On one of the trips we did when we were looking at setting up a learning academy for the Future Fund Academy, which teaches culture. One of the peer groups that we identified in the study was Disney and the Disney University, because they do cultural induction for their teams in a way that seems quite effective. And so we organised for some meetings with a person who was involved in that activity and had a tour of the facility, which included lunch at the location that you're referring to.
Wow. What about, again, the Future Fund Academy? This is, when I talk about, that triangle of dependence, right, and I just talk about constantly just government growing. The idea that the Future Fund has to be looking after its culture and needs to set up the Future Fund Academy. How does this produce a return on the investment? How does this produce anything other than a better experience for the people who already work for the public service? Now, one of the reasons Google is apparently a great place to work is because Google decides that they're going to offer a 5-star buffet for lunch, or they're going to let you play football in the middle of a meeting, but that's a private company. This is effectively a taxpayer-funded organisation. David Pocock was the one who was asking the questions and getting this bloke to squirm. Here he is driving the point home about how these people are just taking the piss every day.
Does the Future Fund really need someone to go ahead and check out hotels? What was she checking, the firmness of beds or conference facilities? I'm serious. Seems like it's bordering on, if you ask the average punter out there whether the Future Fund needed to send someone, I assume business class.
Business class.
Yeah, to go and check out some hotels, they'd probably say, yeah, nah.
Oh, business class, of course, mate. I mean, was there any other way? Remember, we're not talking about the CEO. We are talking about the executive who was sent. Unbelievable. His executive assistant, all right? His executive assistant. Look, okay. The idea that you get to go taxpayer-funded expense and you have to see the rooms, but what, the internet doesn't exist? Again, I just love all of this. Now, I won't tell you too many secrets about how our world works, but occasionally, every now and then, when we want to have a look at a place that we're going to go and do an Our Town at, we'll do it online. We'll have a look at a couple of the photos. Fair dinkum. Unbelievable. Oh, just business class, no question. No question, it's business class. I mean, again, if I've ever been lucky enough to get up there, it's great. Of course it's enjoyable. But every now and then, perhaps not everyone, every time. Which brings me to the one who thinks she will be Prime Minister one day. The perfect example of the modern politician. The person who's breaking norms and taking names. The person who knows the misogyny speech by Julia Gillard like it was the Lord's Prayer. And she's, powerful pantsuiting and I'm the future, and depending on who you believe, she certainly has a belief that she has a massive political future in front of her, and by giving essentially good news portfolios such as communications, where of course the media is going to be very nice to her, or sport, where not a lot of regulation involved, yet a lot of free tickets are thrown around. We learnt what we suspected to be the case, which was about how much money was being spent for her and the staff to go off to the US. But before we get there, the reason she was at the National Press Club today is because, of course, next week the teenage social media ban kicks in. Now, let's be very clear. While I am not interested in the personal political fortunes of the minister or the government, I support the idea that Peter Dutton had, that's right, a couple of years ago to actually deal with this stuff. Social media is in many ways like a bad casino. No natural light, all dopamine and no clocks anywhere. Kids get trapped in it, and we know that there are plenty of people stepping forward with evidence about how serious it can be, a way of being bullied 24/7. So I am not looking to one side about the seriousness of this issue, but some of the sanctimony around it just is doing my head in. Now, of course, this person who would like to be Prime Minister one day, now remember, she was previously the aged care minister. She stuffed that up. Well, now, of course, that won't matter because, remember, it's not about their record, it's about their projection into the future. This is what she says about the changes which are on their way next week.
With one law, we can protect Generation Alpha from being sucked into purgatory by predatory algorithms described by the man who created the feature as behavioural cocaine.
All right, good to see you. Now, okay. Now, unbelievably, right, Annika Wells gets to have it both ways. I'm going to save a generation from the evils of social media, while, of course, being one of the principal figures in the government that uses social media to talk to voters like their children.
What do Rory Gilmore's boyfriends have in common with coal, nuclear, gas and renewables?
Welcome to Politics is Pop Culture, Season 2. Back in the habit. Housing.
Like a maths dinner party, this budget week has been filled with drama and intrigue. So welcome to Policy as Pop Culture.
Do you ever look at someone and wonder what is going on inside their head?
Now, this seems to be the House style. This seems to be the way that many Australians wish to interact with the process. Conversations around policy, who cares? It's all about who's kind of more like the one I like and why, because they talk about the stuff that I like. Well, I wonder how many of those people who all of these videos are actually for will be okay with the idea that the person who's just one of us fighting for you in Canberra about the reality of just how cushy her life now is. As you know, she was dealing with matters to do with Optus, and then she had to go to the United States. Why? Because she was trying to say what's happening in Australia should happen around the rest of the world. We also showed you at the time, despite the fact that it was all hard work everywhere, there was the odd little party. And of course, she was involved in many a forum that had nothing to do with communications over there. But again, that's just me being picky, right? Communications Minister Annika Wells put $100,000 on the taxpayer tab for 3-day flights to New York. Now, she had to get there and she had to hurry. But have a listen to the breakdown in this cash. Now, remember, anyone who has ever flown to New York City from Australia knows there's two main ways to get there. In this case, it would be Canberra to Sydney and then Sydney to LA, LA New York, or it might be Sydney or potentially Brisbane, across to Dallas, and then you might again move your way. So there's a little bit of hopping going around. But have a listen to why this cost so much money. Again, next time you see one of these videos that she's just, working mum, doing her bit, this is how she truly treats your credit card.
Annika Wells and 2 staff travelled to the UN General Assembly in September to promote Australia's world-first social media ban for under-16s. According to the government, airfares alone came to $94,800 Australian dollars. Accommodation was just under $18,000 and ground transport cost a further $6,000.
Nothing to see here. Now, again, it's just without question, that if I'm the minister, I'm definitely flying business class. Oh, and the staff have to as well. But again, $30,000? Apart from that, of course, even bigger numbers, which again, as a person who has flown to America plenty of times, I'm across the pricing of how long it takes to get there. Now, either they were booking the day before, unlikely, or they just didn't care and they were willing to pay the surge prices. Why were the staff flying like that? Why is there no question that the minister can't fly premium economy? Not suggesting that row 58C is exactly where they should be, but they don't even think twice about whether or not when they have to travel, whether they should travel in the best possible way. Because, of course, they don't have to pay. Now, when she was asked about this today, Annika Wells did not like being asked about it because it diverted from the true purpose of the National Press Club address, which was, she is awesome, bow down, or be named sexist if you don't.
How do you justify spending this amount of taxpayers' dollars?
Well, the reason you know all those things is because we're transparent about them, and we will disclose them, and we'll continue to disclose information about that trip through the usual processes. That trip was undertaken as the Minister for Communications, and I would think the people who were there for that UN event who join us in this room today would agree with me that it was incredibly important. That event fueled a global momentum in this space.
You don't think that was expensive for airfares? Over $94,000?
I've answered your question.
Now, again, there will be people who will say, oh, the bloke from Sky News was asking the question, how good was it that you just wouldn't play into his narrative? The whole point is that the Labor Party always presents itself as, you know, the friend of the little guy, the little gal. The reality, of course, is that what it is about now is about getting yourself to power and enjoying every little perk that goes along the way. Pretending that, of course, we deserve credit because we're being transparent about it. Because, sure, we piss the money against the wall, but we tell you about it later. This is the same person who, remember, is a cabinet minister, right, sitting on the board of directors of Australia, who, when confronted with her own failures to deliver what the government promised it would deliver in relation to keeping an eye to prevent things like the OOO outage when it came to Optus, I'm just a new minister. Social media terrible for teenagers, but look at me. Now, again, I have no doubt that her style of politics is going to be ridiculously popular because of the way that she performs in front of a camera, because of the little connections that happen when you have positions like the ones that she currently does. It'll be hands off. But it is extraordinary that if this stuff was a Liberal, you know how the media would react. Now, again, does it mean that every single person who goes overseas should be, you know, doing it by raft? No. Obviously, key representatives of Australia, when it is relevant, well, they should, of course, be taken care of because it is a representation of us. But remember, we had already paid for the Prime Minister and all of his people to fly to New York. Because of the I'm a new minister meant that she wasn't on the plane that already went to New York. Instead, it was this last-minute booking and the seats had to be as amazing as they obviously were. And I know that you could take any dollar of federal government spending and say, but hang on, what about? But I am going to do this on this one. When these people spend the money like they spend the money, do they feel even slightly guilty about it? 3 million people will run out of food this week. Oh, rubbish. Poppycock. And this style of Annika Wells, where again she has so many free tickets, she's got them on herself, the Minister for Freebies, and we'll get that declaration later in the year, and you watch the extreme amount of media who will not engage with this at all whatsoever about how many freebies there are, how many taxpayer-funded flights, all the rest of it. She seemed to be in a bit of a mood today. And by that I infer nothing other than she was clearly cranky today when being confronted by certain journalists on questions she didn't want to answer. And again, the good politicians are the ones who, yes, can stand there, can bring people's attention, can look like a leader, but the ones who always are going to end up hitting a brick wall are the ones who have got a glass jaw. You tell me whether it's a glass jaw or it's the jaw of a future Prime Minister.
What will it look like? Will there be compensation for, say, media outlets or sporting codes that might lose sponsorship or advertising revenue from such a change? And when do you expect that this long-awaited reform would actually be realised?
Good try, Josh. Thank you for the questions that I've heard from you several times in the months running up to now. I am not going to prosecute this through the media.
Why has it taken until the last few weeks for digital duty of care consultation to start?
I don't accept the premise. These are big public policy questions.
You don't think that was expensive for airfares? Over $94,000?
I've answered your question.
Now, again, that was the West Australian, the Turnbull Times and Sky News. Now, people will be always very scared to have a crack because this is the Communications Minister and she's, she could regulate us all out of existence. I just can't stand these people because, again, they pretend to be something else, but then they end up being exactly the way that they end up being, which is pretty poor form. The pub test, I repeat, no bar in Australia, regardless of where it is in Australia, thinks it is okay to be spending this much money to have the flashiest possible flight for someone to go to a place like the United Nations, where it wasn't exclusively about the very policy that when you get asked about it, you pretend, well, it's all about the kids. Oh, yeah, more money. Despite the fact that this will be the law, is there anyone who doesn't know this is going to be the law? The government will, of course, be using more of your money to tell us about the new laws. $10 million on an advertising campaign to tell people how this thing's going to work. Because, of course, God forbid, the kids who are already smart enough to know what's going on, who will be confronted with the technology and be able to see it for themselves. No. The advertising is for the people who aren't the kids. The advertising is to send the message that here we are protecting the kids from a technology that, of course, they weaponise during an election. Remember, this is the government that says TikTok, so bad because of potential Chinese surveillance, you shouldn't use it on a phone in Parliament House. But the very same politicians film social media videos for TikTok in Parliament House. I've had enough of these people, but sadly, we will have them for a long time, and potentially people like this and a style of politics like this. And you know what immediately happened? Oh, sexism. No, it's called accountability. You want to put yourself up as a leader? Well, part of being a leader is being able to handle the questions that you don't want to answer and not just pretending that the role of the media, and the idea, again, the communications media, that the role of the media is to sit there and just dutifully write down what you had to say and clap you on social media. Again, great difference between the real world and the fake one that they create for themselves in social media. Now, speaking about secrets and the way that this government works, or more importantly doesn't, we know that they love a secret document. And this government is now making a decision to try to increase how hard it is to get information out of the government. Ludicrously, they want to increase the ability to say no to everything. Why? Because it's cabinet in confidence, which means the freedom of information laws would produce even less than what you currently see. And today, a bunch of Labor senators have voted for more secrecy. Labor senators were part of a committee, along with other senators, about this potential bill, which is terrible and shouldn't even be coming out of first gear. But surprise, surprise, some people wanted to censor the internet. Oh yeah, but they're so much better than those evil libs. Labor senators were alone in backing the bill in the committee's report released this afternoon, accepting evidence from the Attorney General's Department that it would continue to promote accountable and effective government while making changes to ensure the ongoing viability of the FOI system, please. Dissenting reports, David Pocock, Greens, Coalition, Lambie. So this thing's not going to pass. And they say that it is unwarranted and undemocratic. Liberal Senator and Deputy Chair Lee Blythe saying that it undermines public trust and accountability, correct. Green Senator David Shoebridge criticised Labor for ignoring evidence given to the committee and rejecting the amendments described as a case study in how hubris and addiction to secrecy guides their politics. See the spending of one Communications Minister. See the attitude of the person running the Future Fund. This stuff annoys people because we understand that there are people who have the opportunity to lead us. But when they want to lead you up the garden path that you're lying eyes, that we should get a gold medal because we're transparent about how much money that we waste. That's the stuff that sends people, frankly, crazy. And speaking of social media and the overuse of it, let's have a look again as you were working hard, and this being now a Wednesday, you're starting to earn money for yourself, not just raising money for the government. What did they spend time on with their taxpayer-funded social media staff? Well, let's have a look at this one from the Education Minister.
I got a text! Hashtag it's given vacation! Hashtag time to play!
then there's this, again, from a person who writes the laws that apply to your life.
William, look who Mummy's with.
You can make the video and just send it to the kid, right? Or show it when you get home. Oh, no, but it's got to go on the internet because we've all got to be reminded. Not like those old crusty male politicians who never mentioned their kids. And this South Australian Labor MP.
We just want to see you shake that.
Make it stop, make it stop, make it stop.